Everyone reacts differently to betrayal, but no one will argue with the fact that these are always negative emotions. My wife cheated on me and her lover got what he deserved, but more on that later. What happened? 10 years ago. Hello, April? Yes, it's me, Beth. I was just getting out of the shower when the phone rang. I tried to turn off the answering machine, but I didn't have time. What's wrong, April? You seemed very upset in your message. I just got back from the store and thought I should call you. What's going on? I've done a really stupid thing, and when I tell Dave, I know he's going to want a divorce. What's wrong, April? I slept with Brad today. I feel terrible. Last night when we were dancing at the homecoming, he invited me to lunch, and for some stupid reason I agreed. Then we went to his room, and that's where it happened. When I tell Dave, I know he's going to leave me. I do not know what to do, she sobbed. Oh my God, April. Don't tell Dave. He doesn't need to know that you made this huge mistake. Didn't Brad fly to New York today? Yes, but I hate myself. He went home right after hours. You know. I love Dave, I really do. It's just that Brad was my first, and I was lost in memories. I totally screwed up, and now I'm going to lose Dave. Look, April, you made a mistake, a huge mistake, but now it's over. Brad is back in New York, and he's married too, so he won't talk about it. Let go of the situation. Focus on being the best wife and mother you can be. Don't hide anything from Dave, and be sure to show him how much you love him. You'll have to accept what you've done, but don't ruin your marriage because of one mistake. You're right, Beth. To be honest, it wasn't that great. Dave is a much better lover than Brad. I think I'll follow your advice. I'll just have to put up with it. I have a 10-year-old recording of a phone conversation. We had and still have an answering machine that rings 4 times before listening to a message. If you pick up the phone while the other person is still on the line, they record the conversation. That's exactly what happened to April. She went to the store, and when I got home and listened to the message, I heard exactly that. I was in complete shock. I didn't know what to do. My beautiful wife, the mother of my 3-year-old daughter, cheated on me with her ex-boyfriend. I wasn't sure what my next step would be. I needed to solve something urgently, so I took the film and put a new one in the machine. I rummaged through the laundry basket and found her underwear with evidence. I put the tape and her underwear in a plastic bag and hid them in the basement. I plan to keep this as evidence if necessary. Let me tell you a little bit about our lives. April, Brad, Beth, and I went to the same school. Brad and April were known to everyone as a married couple, until Brad was caught kissing Mary Lou. When April saw them, she yelled at Brad and said she didn't want to see him anymore. Of course, he tried to get her back, but she always said no. That's when April and I started dating. I think at first she did it to get back at Brad, but eventually she fell in love with me. I liked her back in high school, but I never had much of a chance in Brad's presence. In the yearbook, Brad was recognized as the most likely candidate for success. He was a star football player and also played baseball. April was recognized as Miss Congeniality and the most beautiful girl in the class. I also had a title, MacGyver, Mr. Fix. They named me MacGyver after the TV show because I could fix almost anything, although, of course, not as well as the real MacGyver. Some friends even called me McDave. April and Brad were crowned at the prom, but she didn't spend much time with him. Actually, she was my girlfriend, and Brad ended up choosing Mary Lou. Let me tell you a little bit about Mary Lou. She was attractive and well-endowed. And now here's the interesting thing. After graduating from high school, Mary Lou joined a monastery. I swear she's a nun now, and her name is Sister Mary Lou. After graduating from high school, Brad went to university in New York to study law. After graduating from college, He decided to stay in New York and become a lawyer in the Big Apple. April went to community college to study secretarial skills, and I went to trade school to become a car repair specialist. In the end, we all got what we wanted. After college, April and I fell in love, and we did everything together. After we got married, she became pregnant, and we were overjoyed. We welcomed a baby girl, Carly, who was, of course, our little bundle of joy. I started my own car repair shop and quickly found myself with more work than I could handle on my own, so I hired 2 guys to help out. Back then, people wanted their cars fixed quickly, and we were proud to run a full-service shop. I even opened for half days on weekends when necessary to keep up with the demand. Life was good. Everything seemed perfect. My parents were really proud of me, and while April's parents thought I was a nice guy and a good provider, they wished she had waited to see if Brad would come back. But you can't please everyone, and I believed in doing my best as a husband and father. Our 5th-year class reunion was coming up, and I couldn't care less about attending, although I wouldn't mind catching up with a few of the girls I used to date. I've seen many of them when they brought their cars in for repairs. We had a pretty attractive class of women. Of course, April had managed to keep both her beauty and charm. She really wanted to go to the reunion, so off we went. April looked amazing as usual, though she seemed to dress a bit more provocatively for the occasion, especially for old classmates like Brad. When I complimented her on how great she looked, she joked about maintaining her prettiest title. She also claimed she dressed up for me, to which I sarcastically replied, "Yeah, right." When we arrived at the reunion, sure enough, Brad rushed over to greet us, though it was clear he was there to see April and couldn't care less about me. I shook his hand and asked where his wife was. He said she couldn't make it, and was managing their office until he returned on Sunday night. Apparently, she had been his secretary before they got married, and she insisted on staying in that role. Something told me she was the one wearing the pants in that relationship. I was chatting with everyone in the class and danced with several of the girls. Every time I was on the dance floor, I noticed April was dancing with Brad, and it started to bother me. I mentioned it to her, and after that she danced with a few other classmates. In the end, we wrapped up the reunion by dancing the last few songs together. Some classmates suggested meeting for lunch the next day before those who traveled had to leave, but I told them I couldn't make it because I had to fix a few cars early in the morning. April said she'd try to join if she could get her mom to watch the baby. I wanted to protest, but that would have made me look bad, and April had never given me any reason to distrust her. I got up early the next morning and went to the shop while April was still sleeping. I ended up working a bit later than usual, and when I got home around 5 p.m., I found a note from April saying she had gone to pick up our daughter. I noticed the answering machine flashing and listened to the message. When April got home, she mentioned that her mom would leave Carly overnight so we could be alone. She took me to the bedroom and we made love. I asked her what was the reason for this, and she replied that she wanted to show me how much she loved me and cared about me. Looking back, I think that was the beginning with the words, "I'm sorry," that I was going to get. I'm not sure if I did the right thing by not telling her that I knew about this affair. I believed she was genuinely sorry. We probably made love more times that night than we have ever done since we got married. It didn't end there. The next day she was also very active. I even had to call the store and warn my guys that I would be a little late. Life was better than usual, and it was always good. I sincerely felt that she was trying to make amends to me for something that she didn't think I knew about. Eventually, she got pregnant. Life was good. We had another little girl, and we named her Danny after me. My full name is David Daniel Moore. Over the years, Danny became my little sweetheart. Carly always stuck close to her mom, whether in the kitchen or wherever else she went, but Danny always wanted to come with me to the garage. I took her along as much as I could, though I didn't want her around the garage fumes too often. Above the garage, I had a small apartment where I could rest or take a nap. It had a kitchen and a bathroom, so I could shower there instead of going home dirty and smelling like a grease monkey. Whenever I could, I'd take Danny up there to play games. She wanted to spend time with her dad, and I loved spending time with her too. We took the girls everywhere. They absolutely loved amusement parks, and we'd spend the whole day there so they could go on all the rides. Danny always wanted to ride with me, while Carly preferred to ride with her mom. Man, I loved my family. Sometimes I wish I had never found out about the cheating. Life would have been perfect. Our 10-year reunion was coming up, and I really didn't want to go. I was worried about what might happen if Brad showed up. My life had been good for the past 5 years, and I didn't want anything to ruin that. I asked April if she was interested in going, and when she said no, I was so relieved. To make sure no friends could change her mind, I went ahead and got us tickets to Kings Island, the amusement park, and booked motel rooms for 2 nights, ensuring we wouldn't be available for any visitors. I was relieved. April was still trying. I could see that. We had a great time in the park once again. My girls loved it, and April was just adorable. As soon as the girls wanted to spend the night in a motel, she was ready for intimacy. Damn it, I was lucky. At school, April worked as a part-time assistant in the school office. Thus, when there were no classes at school, she helped the girls. My business was growing too. I've hired 2 more employees. Life was good. The school was offering DNA tests to all students so that, in case of any issues, parents wouldn't have to search for donors. In a worst-case scenario, such as a missing child, these tests could help with identification. We had both Carly and Danny tested and needed to pick up the results from the doctor's office 3 weeks later. April was working at the school that day and asked if I could go to the doctor's office to collect the results, which I agreed to do. When I arrived at the office, the doctor handed me the results and mentioned that he was surprised the girls resembled each other so much, considering they were only half-sisters. My mind went blank, and when the doctor noticed my reaction, he asked if I was okay. I asked him what he meant by half-sisters. The doctor responded, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have said anything, I wasn't aware." "No what, Doc? Are you saying they have different fathers?" I could hardly believe what I was hearing. "I'm sorry, David. I shouldn't have mentioned it. The tests indicate that one of the parents is different in each test." "Doc, can you give me a test? I need to confirm. I'm pretty sure, but I need the results to be certain." The doctor hesitantly took my blood and promised to expedite the test, aiming to get the results within a week. He apologized again, and I looked him directly in the eye and said, "Doc, I am not the biological father of one of my girls, but they are both still my daughters, and I will love them equally. I am the only father they know, and if I hear that you've shared this conversation with anyone, we'll have a serious problem. Dave, my lips are sealed." I went home with the results, and April looked at them, but they didn't mean much to her, just a series of dots on a chart, unless you really knew how to interpret them. After she reviewed them, I was almost certain she didn't realize that one of our daughters wasn't biologically mine. A week later, I went back to get my results. My suspicion was confirmed. My little pride and joy, Danny, was not my biological daughter. I knew it had to be due to the affair April had with Brad. I was furious about what she had done to me and hoped that no one would ever find out. I wasn't even going to tell April. In the following weeks, I felt deeply depressed. When April asked me what was wrong, I told her I wasn't feeling well. She suggested I see a doctor, but I replied that I had taken medication and would be fine. In reality, I just drank nearly a pint of whiskey and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up and found little Danny lying on my arm. No matter who she was my little girl. As time passed, I began to recover, and life returned to a semblance of normalcy. Danny remained my sweet little girl, and April continued to be as loving and kind as ever. One day, Beth called and spoke to April. After their conversation, April told me that Beth and her husband, Mark, were divorcing after 10 years of marriage due to irreconcilable differences. Beth hadn't shared any further details. Life continued with April's secret and my own 2 secrets. When the 15-year reunion approached, Carly was 13 and Danny was nearing 10. April said Beth wanted her to attend the reunion, as she was on the committee with Beth that year. It would be hard not to go after planning it. Although I wasn't keen on attending, I certainly wasn't going to let April go alone. We made our way to the reunion. The classmates seemed older than before. Many of them we hadn't seen in a decade since we missed the last one. Brad showed up again as usual without his wife. He extended his hand for a handshake and I told him, "Brad, I'm done pretending. I don't like you and never have. I'm not shaking your hand, and I don't expect you to spend the entire reunion with my wife." April looked at me and said, "David, how could you speak to Brad like that?" "I'm so embarrassed." She turned to Brad and began apologizing for me, so I waved my hand in disgust and walked away. Later, April confronted me, saying, "How could you do that, David?" "Brad hasn't done anything to deserve that. He's always treated you with respect." I almost revealed the whole truth, but instead said, "All he wants is to hang around you all night, and we both know it. If you want him so badly, there he is, go get him." April ran to the ladies' room in tears. Beth caught part of the conversation and followed her. Maybe I said too much. I guess I had reached my limit. I walked over to the bar and started drinking. Soon April returned and mentioned she was going to chat with a few classmates. I watched her, and she mostly avoided Brad, dancing with him only once the entire night. I spent most of the evening alone at the bar, with occasional conversations with others. When the reunion ended, April had to help me to the car. She told me how embarrassed she was by my behavior, and then gave me the silent treatment. Once we got home, I went straight to bed. The next morning, the alarm went off, and I felt awful. It was Sunday, but I had promised a few people I'd finish their cars. I got up and headed to work. As I worked, I regretted my behavior at the reunion. Even though I despised Brad and was upset with April, neither of them knew the reasons why. I called in a few extra guys to help, which would cost me more since it was Sunday, but I planned to go home and take my family out for dinner. When I got home, the house was empty. It was 1 p.m. The answering machine was blinking, so I played the message. "Hello," April began. "Hey girl, what's up?" It was Beth. "Hi Beth, I just got out of the shower when the phone rang. What's going on?" "Lunch. Do you want to join a group of classmates?" "Who's going, Beth?" "Besides you and me, about half the class. Can you come?" "Is Brad coming, Beth?" David would be furious if I went to lunch with Brad. "For heaven's sake, April, it's just lunch with old friends, not a rendezvous with an ex. Besides, you barely spoke to Brad last night, and it's only lunch." Given how David embarrassed me last night, it would serve him right. "What time and where, Beth?" "Holiday Inn at noon." "All right, but I need to be back before David gets off work. He should be home by 5 or earlier." "That's it," she's at it again. I went downstairs and picked up a 10-year-old bag. I wrapped it in shrink wrap to keep the air out. Then I started to pack my things. I was planning to move and live in an apartment above the garage. Most of my personal belongings were in the truck, and 2 suitcases were standing by the door, waiting for April. At 4 o'clock, she entered the house. She was wearing a low-cut mini dress decorated with jewels, and she looked stunning. "David, what are you doing at home?" "I thought you were working until 5. "I felt guilty about the way I treated you yesterday, and I wanted to make it up to you by inviting you to dinner. It seems you've already eaten." "David, I need to tell you something. Before you say anything, I want to tell you something." I listened to the recorded message. My God, David, we didn't do anything. We just had lunch. I wouldn't do anything to hurt you. You have to believe me. She started crying. Let me tell you something, April, and then see if you can say the same thing. I haven't had a relationship with anyone since we got married. Can you say the same thing, April? David, to be honest, we just had lunch. There were about 30 people in the class. Ask anyone. Brad wanted to do something, but I wouldn't let him. I told him no, and if he tries again, I'll tell you. That's when I slapped him, David. You have to believe me. Nothing happened, I swear. Then repeat what I said, or are you going to lie? All right, David. To be honest, I haven't had a relationship with anyone since we got married. Now, can I explain what happened so that we can forget about it and make peace? Not yet. I have another tape that you can listen to. I pulled out the tape, and when she saw the underwear, she screamed, "Oh my God, David, no!" It was a mistake. I didn't want it to happen like this. I love you. Only you, she said, listening to her conversation with Beth 10 years ago. She was crying and didn't know what to say. And there's something else you should know. I'm not Danny's biological father. Your lover, Brad, yes. But as far as I'm concerned, she's my daughter, and I'm not going to let that jerk take her away from me. I put my and Danny's DNA tests on the table along with a document that said, "No matches found." April screamed, "No, it can't be. It can't be true. Please, David, don't leave me. I love you, David. I only love you." As I was walking out the door with my last 2 suitcases, I heard her crying.
April's story. Where should I start? I will try to explain what happened without telling you all over again. I will have to repeat a few places so that you understand both sides of the story. As David said, we all went to the same high school. Brad was my boyfriend at the time. We probably studied together for almost 2 years. We've only had intimacy once, and that was in senior year. It was terrible. After Brad enjoyed himself and told me how wonderful I was, he went home. I was more disappointed than ever. You hear all these stories and watch movies, and then you experience it for yourself. In the weeks that followed, Brad wanted to have fun again, but I kept putting it off. I had no intention of being just his toy. That's when I caught him and Mary Lou in the stands of the gym. I called him a jerk and said I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. He kept apologizing, but it didn't matter. I stopped seeing him. That's when David and I started dating. I've always liked him, but I've never pretended that I did, because I was dating Brad. Dave thought I was dating him to make Brad jealous, and although there was some truth to that, I was just a high school girl in love like everyone else. I was thrilled when David asked me out on a date. Just so you know, some people call him Dave, others David. I use both names. It's funny to think about it. Dave believed that all the girls were in love with Brad because he was an athlete. In fact, most of the girls were in love with Dave. He was smart, handsome, in as good shape as any other athlete, and could fix anything. We nicknamed him McDave, after the TV character MacGyver. We started dating, and about 6 months later, when we were both in college, we became close. In fact, we were making love. I didn't expect much after what happened with Brad, but David was incredibly sweet and gentle. After that first experience, we were close many times. As soon as we both graduated, we got married. He was a wonderful lover. My parents liked him, but they were particularly impressed by the fact that Brad was a lawyer. I told them straight out that I didn't love Brad. I loved David, and that was the end of it. Shortly after that, I got pregnant with Carly. She was incredibly sweet and charming. Everyone, including David, thought she looked like me. I believe that children look the way you want them to. Sometimes she looked like me, and sometimes she looked like David. All I knew was that she was a wonderful child. We were very happy, and life was wonderful. And then came that terrible day. We were at the reunion of our 5th-year class and had a great time. Maybe I was showing off too much. I remember dancing with Brad several times, wanting him to see what he had lost by choosing Mary Lou, who eventually became a nun. The following day, a few of my classmates went out for lunch before heading home. David couldn't join us because he had some cars he needed to finish. I went alone and ended up making a terrible mistake. After lunch, I went to Brad's room, and he began making advances toward me. Despite repeatedly saying no because I was married, I inexplicably gave in and let him have me. I think it might have been because I was comparing him to David, though I'm not sure. It was just a foolish, regrettable mistake. Afterwards, I felt nothing but shame. I realized how wrong it was at that very moment. We both got dressed, and I had to leave quickly. I drove home in tears, needing to cleanse myself of the shame I felt. I can tell you now that cheating can't be washed away. Once it's done, it stays with you forever. I reached out to my friend Beth because I needed to talk to someone. Beth was my best friend, and I knew she would keep my secret if I asked. She wasn't available, so I left her a message asking her to call me. While I was in the shower, trying to scrub away my guilt, the phone rang. I heard the answering machine pick up, and I managed to grab the phone before Beth hung up. I told her everything that had happened, how it would ruin my marriage, and how I was about to lose the man I love. Beth advised me not to tell him, as it would only hurt him and endanger our good marriage. I agreed with her. I made a stupid mistake, and I have to live with it. I decided that the best way to make amends to David was to show him love and be a good mother to our daughter. I didn't pay attention to the answering machine incident, and as you know, David found the tape and my underwear, which I saved. When David came home, I took him to the bedroom and made amends. I really loved him and believed that I could bear the guilt of my actions while David was around. About 9 months later, our second child was born, whom we named Danny after David. Since David's middle name is Daniel, we decided to name our cute baby Danny after him. People often said she looked like me, Carly, or even David, but I thought she looked a lot like her sister Carly, and as she grew up, the resemblance became more and more obvious. It was clear that they were sisters. Our life went on wonderfully, and we enjoyed spending time with the children. Little Danny always wanted to accompany her dad, so David took her with him whenever he could. They were inseparable. When the reunion was approaching, I told David that I was not interested in attending it. I wasn't sure if Brad was coming from New York, but I knew I didn't want to see him. David didn't mind. He didn't like homecoming either. Instead, he arranged for the 4 of us to take a special trip to the Kings Island amusement park. We spent 2 nights at the motel, rode with the kids until they were exhausted, and made love when we got back to our room. David was a wonderful father and husband. We conducted DNA testing at the school. Each child had the option to be tested, and the results were sent to the family doctor for pickup. I asked David if he could stop by the doctor's office to collect Carly's and Danny's results. He brought them home and showed them to me, but they just appeared as a series of dots and dashes. They didn't make any sense to me, so David stored them in our safe for future reference. Looking back, I recall David being somewhat irritable at that time. I assumed he was coming down with something, as he rested and drank a lot for about 3 days, and even slept on the couch to avoid passing anything on to me. It's odd now that I didn't notice any other changes in David. Every morning, Danny would wake up in the middle of the night and snuggle next to him. She really adored him. Life soon returned to normal. The kids were involved in various school activities, and David and I attended everything for both of them. I remember when Danny was about 9 and had career day at school. She asked David to speak to her class about being a car repairman. David agreed with a laugh and was proud of her when she expressed her admiration and desire to become an auto mechanic like him. Beth was organizing our 15-year reunion and asked for my help. David was not thrilled about attending and made his feelings clear, but I had to go as part of the committee. It had been 10 years since I had last seen Brad, and I had no lingering feelings for him. I dressed nicely for the reunion because I always wanted to look presentable. I wanted David to be proud of his wife. I was friendly but made sure not to flirt, knowing that David would disapprove. When we walked in, Brad was already there and approached us immediately. I was shocked by what David said to him. He said, "Brad, I'm done pretending. I don't like you and never have. I'm not going to shake your hand, and I don't expect you to spend the whole reunion with my wife." I turned to David and said, "David, how could you say that?" I'm so embarrassed. I looked at Brad and began to apologize, but David just waved his hand in disgust and walked away. Later, I confronted David, saying, "How could you do that, David? Brad hasn't done anything to deserve this. He's always shown you respect. I was just trying to smooth things over." David must have thought I still liked Brad, which wasn't the case at all. David had gotten drunk, so we left the reunion early, and I drove him home. The next morning, he went to the shop before I even got up. The girls were staying the night with my mom. I was in the shower when the phone rang. I was almost done and quickly went out to answer the phone. Unfortunately, the answering machine turned on, and I had to wait for it to turn off. It was Beth calling to see if I was going to school lunch. She mentioned that about half of the class would be there. I decided to meet with my classmates, whom I haven't had a chance to talk to since my husband got drunk and I had to take him home. I assumed Brad would be there, but I planned to avoid him as much as possible. When I arrived at the Holiday Inn, we had a reserved dining room due to the large number of visitors. The place was chosen because many classmates who came to the reunion stayed there. I noticed Brad and tried to stay away from him. I greeted him when he came up, but I tried to stay as far away as possible. I was uncomfortable in his presence. I needed to go to the ladies' room, which was around the corner. When I came out, Brad was standing there blocking my way. He grabbed my hands and tried to kiss me, threatening to tell David about what happened at the reunion if I didn't comply. In response, I hit him hard. On my way back to my seat, I passed Beth and Sister Mary Lou, who I knew had witnessed the whole incident. I tried to stay calm, although I was still shaking a little. I took a seat with my friends and started to feel much better. Brad never came back to the table. He must have gone up to his room and then left for home. I'm really not sure. When Beth returned, she quietly asked if I was okay. I assured her I was and mentioned that I planned to tell David about what Brad did today, but I wasn't going to bring up the 5-year reunion, just today's events. I had our van, and Beth asked if I could drive 5 of the classmates to the airport, 3 women and 2 men, one of whom was married. It was a pleasant drive. After dropping them off, I took Beth home and then went back to my house. When I walked in, David was there. He said he came home early to take me out to dinner as a way to make up for his behavior at the reunion the night before. I started to tell him what happened with Brad, but before I could get into it, he played a tape message from the answering machine. I told him I hadn't done anything wrong, but he didn't believe me. He didn't give me a chance to explain, saying that he had another message for me. Out of the blue, he turned on a recording of my conversation with Beth about the stupid mistake I made the day after our 5th reunion. I heard myself admit that I slept with Brad, and then David threw my underwear on the table. I couldn't stand it and started crying. I had no idea what he knew. Before turning on the recording, he asked if I had had anyone else since we got married. I said no, not knowing that he had a record. And then he told me the worst news of my life. Our child, Danny, was not his biological daughter. He showed me the DNA test result marked "does not match" next to Danny's DNA test results. I felt like I wanted to die. I had no idea. He left, and I was left alone, bursting into tears. I was crying for myself and David. He was the perfect husband and father, keeping it a secret for 10 years. Years after Danny was born, finding out that he wasn't her biological father must have been heartbreaking. He was her father in every way, starting with the fact that he was present at her birth, and ending with the fact that just yesterday he took the girls to my mother. I wanted to do something terrible to myself. I wished God would come down and take me away. I felt like I was probably going to hell anyway for my past actions. I had lost the man I loved, and now I had to pick up his children and tell them that their father had abandoned me. God help me.
What happens next? I should have realized years ago that it would eventually come to this. I kept her affair to myself for 10 years, and I hid the truth about Danny's biological father for at least 4. Perhaps I should have acted on it 10 years ago and ended things then. The last decade has been both the best and worst of my life. It's insane that we both held on to the same secret. Since I knew and stayed with her anyway, why didn't I just confront her and tell her I was aware? At least I wouldn't be waiting to see if she would cheat again, waiting to dig up old evidence. Why? Why after 10 years did she go back to that sleazeball? My mind was racing with questions for her and for myself, but I had no answers. Danny, my little Danny, Daddy's little girl, I wanted to protect her from ever finding out. She's my daughter, and I needed to shield her. I had to make sure April never told her. I didn't want anyone else to know the truth. I genuinely believe April never knew. She was stunned when I revealed the truth about Danny's DNA and mine. On Monday after school, I received a call at the garage. It was Danny. "Daddy, when are you coming home? I miss you." Mommy keeps crying and Carly is just sitting in her room. "Please come home, Daddy." It broke my heart to hear that. "Sweetie, Daddy can't come home right now. Mommy and I are having some issues. But I promise I'll pick you and Carly up, and we can go out for pizza or something." "Can Mommy come too?" "Not this time, sweetie. Maybe next time. Go ask Carly if she wants to come with us." "Dad, Carly wants to go, but she says she needs to take care of Mommy and won't stop crying. Can you and I go to McDonald's, and I'll bring something back for Carly and Mommy?" Wow, what great kids, always thinking of others. "Sure, sweetheart, we can do that. Just find out what they want, and I'll pick you up in about 20 minutes. "Okay, Daddy, I love you." I heard a voice in the background. "Daddy, Mommy said to say, we all love you, and we'll see you soon. Bye." Damn it. I'm at a loss for words. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I both hate and love her. Why can't I think clearly? I went and talked to the guys about locking up the garage when they were finished. I had some really good workers who knew their stuff and were well paid for it. They respected me, and I respected them. I mentioned that April and I were having issues, just in case I seemed short with them. I was apologizing in advance. Danny jumped into the truck and gave me a big kiss on the cheek, then 2 more kisses, one from Carly and one from Mommy. With tears in my eyes, I drove to McDonald's. I let Danny know I'd be staying at the garage and that she and Carly could call me any time. Even though I wasn't at home, I'd still be available to them whenever they needed. I told her to let her mom know I needed to discuss a few things and that I'd call her tomorrow after school. The next day when I called, Carly answered the phone and said her mom was in the bathroom but would be out soon. Then she asked, "Dad, what happened that made you move out? Did Mom, Danny, or I do something? I know I'm only 12, but I'm pretty smart. I know you wouldn't just leave us without a reason. What happened, Dad? What did we do? Honey, you and Danny didn't do anything wrong. I couldn't be more proud of both of you." "So what did Mom do, Dad?" "I know she loves you. She cries every night, and I'm a little worried she might do something rash. I know Mom. If she did something wrong, she would do anything to fix it. That's just who she is. Give her a chance, Dad. I don't know what she did that was bad enough for you to leave. She won't tell us anything. Honey, this is between your mom and me. There's nothing you can do. Your mom and I need to work out some major differences. I'm glad you're there for her. Dad, Danny and I are here for you too. We're a family, Dad. A good family. You need to know that. I love you, Dad." I was crying, trying hard not to let it show. God, I loved my girls. April picked up the phone. "Hi, David." "April, we need to talk. I'm really concerned about Danny. I never want her to find out that I'm not her biological father." "You are her father. You've always been there for her, And that's what a real father does. Dave, I never knew, honestly. I suppose it's a blessing in disguise that I didn't know. I can't discuss this over the phone. I need to see you in person to explain what happened. April, how can I trust anything you say now? You've been deceiving me for at least 10 years. For all I know, everything you've ever told me has been a lie. I don't know what to believe anymore. Dave, please meet with me so I can explain everything I know. If you choose to think it's all lies, that's your decision, but please give me a chance to explain. If not for us, then for Carly and Danny. I'm just asking for the opportunity to be heard before you end our marriage and our family. I could hear her crying through the phone. All right, April, I'll listen to what you have to say. I'm not sure if I'll believe it, but I'll give you a chance to explain. Thank you, David. That's all I ask. I promise to answer any questions you might have. Even if you don't believe me, at least I'll know I've been honest with you. I spent the rest of the week handling my garage business. I spoke with the girls every day and they shared what was happening at school. Carly mentioned that Mom seemed a bit better since our conversation. My little girl thanked me for talking to her mother. I wasn't looking forward to talking with April. I wasn't sure if I would even believe her. And I had to understand why I hadn't walked away 10 years earlier. The best reason I could come up with was that she seemed genuinely remorseful. At least, that's how she sounded on the tape, and she promised to make it up to me. I must admit she had kept that promise until this last reunion lunch. I needed to know why she went and what she did there. Did she go to see Brad or not? I needed answers, which is why I wanted to hear what she had to say. I arrived at the house around noon on Saturday. My 2 girls ran out to greet me. "Daddy's here, Daddy's here," shouted Danny. She jumped into my arms, expecting me to catch her, which I gladly did. I would never let my little one fall, and she trusted me to ensure that. Carly ran out next and gave me a kiss on the cheek. She mentioned that Mom was making lunch. I asked what was on the menu, and Carly smiled, saying that since I was coming over, Mom wanted to make sure we had a good meal because I probably hadn't been eating properly. BBQ steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, corn on the cob, and homemade bread. Mom even had Carly help with it. "I helped too," said Danny. "Yeah, you just kept eating it while it was hot," replied Carly. My 2 daughters were always bickering but truly loved each other. "All right, girls, let's go inside." I walked in and found April in the kitchen looking like a Stepford wife. For those unfamiliar, Stepford wives were women who always dressed up for their husbands, typically in perfect dresses with flawless hair. That's exactly how April looked. She was wearing a cute apron, and the table was beautifully set. "Welcome home, David," she greeted me. She was clearly going all out, and while I appreciated how everything, including April, looked, I needed to rein it in a bit. "I'm not home. I live above the garage. For now, that's my place. I came here just to talk to you." That should deflate her enthusiasm a bit. "Since lunch is ready, will you join us?" April asked. I didn't respond, but remained seated. Just as I was about to help myself to some food, Danny spoke up. "Dad, we need to say grace." Then she recited, "God is great, God is good, let us thank Him for our food, and God, thank you for bringing Daddy home to eat with us. Amen." Damn, it wasn't fair at all. Here I was, intending to have a serious conversation, yet I was enjoying a delicious meal, and I knew my kids were genuine in their feelings. I could tell April's part was a setup, but the kids were truly happy to have their dad at dinner. That woman could cook like nobody else. After we finished eating, I told the girls I'd take them over to Grandma's and that Mommy would pick them up later. "Dad, will you be here when we get back?" "No, sweetheart, not right now. I'm just here to talk to Mommy, and then I'll head back to the garage." The girls looked disappointed. I thanked them for helping their mom prepare such a wonderful meal, and asked if they'd like to go to the zoo the following Saturday. They both shouted, "Yes, we want to go." "Can Mom come too?" Damn, I completely forgot what they might ask. I told them that we would take a look and that I would talk to them within a week. All this time, April just sat in silence. Then she spoke up and said she would clean up while I took the children to her mother. When I returned, she had already cleaned everything and put the leftovers in containers for me. It was just a plan to benefit me, wasn't it, April? I wanted her to know that I could see through it. To tell the truth, it was obvious to anyone. But I needed to start a conversation somehow. Of course it was my idea. But the girls were just happy that their dad would be here. Well, we'd better get started. I'll give you the opportunity to tell me whatever you want. I can interrupt you with questions that I need answers to. Is that okay with you? Whatever you want, David. I just want to tell you everything, and let everything be as it will be. How many times have you slept with Brad? Oh my God, David, you don't have to be so blunt. I told you I'd answer all your questions. How many times have you slept with Brad again? Twice. Once when we met, and that stupid time after the 5th reunion. Are you saying that you've only slept with him twice in your entire life? It's true, David. The first time was so terrible that I had no idea how good it could be until I was with you. Now I regret sleeping with Brad, even that first time. Damn, it threw me a little off track. I talked to a lot of girls from our class. I'm glad I don't have to tell her about them. Why did you do it with him again, April? I don't know, David. Don't expect me to cry much now. I've cried all I can. I honestly don't know. Maybe I wanted to compare you to him. Or maybe I thought it was my fault because the first time was so bad. I really don't know, David. I wish I did. I wish I could go back to that day and undo it. I can wish it never happened. But it did, David. It did. And now I have to live with it for the rest of my life. Her eyes began to fill with tears. Why didn't you tell me? You would have left me, David, I know you would have. I don't know why you didn't leave when you found out. After it happened, I came home and spent an hour in the shower trying to wash the betrayal away. I hated what I did to you, but all I could think about was that if I told you, you would leave me and Carly. I decided to live with the pain and be the best wife I could be. I really wanted to tell you. It was so hard keeping it from you, but I knew it would hurt you, and it would lead to a divorce. I loved you too much to lose you, David. I still love you too much to lose you. She started crying again. What about Danny? When did you find out I wasn't her biological father? 2 weeks ago, when you told me. I was devastated and unsure of what to think. After that session with Brad, I kept washing and washing, trying to erase the thought of him. That night, I made love to you 3 times because I wanted you so badly and wanted to do everything for you. I was thrilled when I got pregnant. It felt so right to have a child with you. But then you showed me the DNA results, and I was lost. If I had known I was pregnant with Brad's child, I would have had a termination of pregnancy. I really would have. I want your children, not anyone else's. I keep wondering if I had known it was Brad's, and if I had aborted, there would have been no Danny. I'm deeply torn up about it. David, as I've said before, Danny is your daughter and no one else's. She will go through her life knowing that. I won't let her be hurt. You're her dad, her only dad. I thought she was done crying, but apparently not. Let's talk about the lunch where you were planning to cheat on me again. Oh God, David, that's not true. Absolutely not true. I was just going to lunch with over half the class. April, I brought the tape with me. Let's listen to it together. I played the tape again. Hello, April said. Hey girl, what's up? It was Beth. Hi, Beth. I just got out of the shower when I heard the phone. What's going on? Lunch? Want to join a group of classmates? Who's going, Beth? Besides you and me, about half the class. Can you come? Is Brad going, Beth? David would be furious if I went to lunch with Brad. For goodness sake, April. It's just lunch with old classmates, not a hookup with an ex-boyfriend. Besides, you barely talked to Brad last night and it's only lunch. After the way David embarrassed me last night, he deserves it. What time and where, Beth? Holiday Inn at noon. Okay. But I need to get home before David finishes work. He should be home by 5 or earlier. Well, that's it. You said, after David embarrassed me last night, it serves him right. What did you mean, April? Did you hint that it would be good for me to go out to lunch with friends or that it would be good for me to have lunch with Brad? Did you sleep with him too, or were you planning to? No, David, you misunderstood. I mean, if I had lunch with Brad, you'd be upset, and that's the truth. The rest was just a general statement. I had no intention of being with Brad, none at all. In fact, he scared me. I did my best to avoid him. Ask Beth, ask anyone. I tried to keep my distance. April, I just can't believe you. You can tell the truth or you can lie. I can't rely on Beth either. She's your best friend and she might lie for you if you're asked. You keep saying that you tried to avoid him. Are you saying that you didn't succeed? David, that's exactly what I've been trying to explain. I went to the ladies' room, and when I came out, Brad was waiting for me. He blocked my way, grabbed my hands, and said, "Kiss me, or I'll tell your husband about that homecoming dinner." So you kissed him then? Is that what you're saying? No, David, never. I hit him. He fell to the ground, and I ran back to lunch. At that moment, Beth and Mary Lou came around the corner. I'm not sure if they saw anything. Ask Beth, she'll tell you. April, I ask you again, can I trust Beth, your best friend? Why did you come home so late? Your lunch couldn't have lasted 4 hours. When I returned to the table, I was out of breath, and Beth asked if I was okay. Then she offered to give some classmates a ride to the airport and said she would come with me. Did you take Brad to the airport? No, he didn't come back to the luncheon after I need him. I think he drove to the reunion instead. Margaret, one of our classmates, mentioned that he likes to flaunt his car. What kind of car does he drive, April? I don't know, David. I've never seen it, and I didn't want to. You were dressed to impress when you came back. Why was that? David, I always dress nicely, especially for you. You know that. But I wasn't there. Did you dress up for someone else like Brad? No, David. I know it's hard for you to believe, but I dressed up for you. I always do. When people see me, I want them to know that I'm your woman. I understand that might be difficult for you to grasp since you're a man, but that's the truth. I didn't respond. Maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. I asked if there was anything else she wanted to tell me before I left. David, 10 years ago I made a mistake that almost led to disaster. I say almost because Danny came through it and I couldn't bear to lose her. I wish that time could be erased from both our memories. My love for you is as strong as ever, no matter what happens now. I was incredibly foolish back then, but I haven't done anything wrong since, including during the luncheon. You forgave me 10 years ago for reasons I still don't understand, but nothing has changed since then. If you could forgive me then, why can't you love me now? My love for you has only grown stronger, and I know you care deeply for Carly and Danny. I love you, David, and I want you back with our family. She started crying again. I told her I needed to think and that I would talk to her again. I asked her to kiss the girls for me and then headed to my truck and back to my apartment above the garage. The conclusion. When I got home, I found myself constantly listening to recordings. I wasn't sure if she was telling the truth or not. I just didn't know. A few days later, Beth came to me and said she wanted to talk. We sat down in my office, and she began by telling me that she had found out about this affair after the 5th reunion. She talked to April, who mentioned that I knew about it. Then Beth said that it was actually her idea for April not to tell me anything, believing that there was nothing to gain from it, as it had been in the past. According to Beth, the only reason April hid it was because she didn't want to hurt me and was afraid that I might divorce her. I told Beth that I was well aware of what happened after the 5th homecoming, but I was more concerned about what happened at the 15th lunch. Before she continued, I warned her that I would be skeptical of her words, given her close friendship with April. "Well," Beth began, "I called April and asked her about lunch, since she was a member of the planning committee. She asked me if Brad would be there, and when I told her he would be, she hesitated whether to come. I made a silly joke that it was just lunch, not an opportunity to sleep with someone. She replied something about how you deserve it. I think she was still upset about yesterday, but I'm sure she didn't mean anything by it. I understand how her comment itself can be misinterpreted. Beth, where was she sitting and talking to Brad? I need the truth, Beth. Her cover won't help anyone." She was sitting as far away from Brad as possible. At one point, Brad came up to her and she just said hi before he left. They had another conversation later. I'm not sure exactly what was said, but I saw what happened. April came out of the bathroom and Brad grabbed her arm. She hit him. He collapsed, and she calmly returned to her seat. What happened then, Beth? April was a bit shaken up, so I calmed her down, and we decided to give a few people a ride to the airport. It was a nice drive, and it seemed to relax April. Dave, I know it's not really my place, but I understand that you've been hurting for a long time, and so has April. She's my best friend, and you're right. The reason I'm here is that she loves you, and you love her. You have 2 great kids together. Don't throw it all away. She didn't do anything except have lunch. Trust me, she wasn't trying to cheat on you. Thanks for coming over, Beth. You're a good friend to April." Beth left, and I thought about what she said. It was pretty much the same as what April had told me. Then I turned around, and Beth had come back in. "David, there's something really important I forgot to mention. It might help you believe me." "What is it, Beth?" "The reason Brad never came back to the table is that he was taken to the hospital. Apparently, he fell, hit the side of his face on the floor, and it was bruising badly, according to the hospital report. Also, for some strange reason, one of his testicles got injured and had to be adjusted. Beverly didn't come to the lunch. She's a nurse at the hospital and called me the other day. Can you believe I forgot to tell April? Could you let her know for me? I just found out yesterday. Brad was going to sue the restaurant, but when they found out about its damage, he decided not to do it. Thanks, Beth. That's helpful news, no matter what I decide. I'll let April know. Wow, maybe there's some truth to this after all. If only I had someone outside of our circle of friends I could trust. The next day, Mary, or should I say Sister Mary Lou, came in to get the oil changed on her convent car. While my team worked on the car, Sister Mary said, "You want to talk to me, don't you?" "Actually, yes, I do. Did you attend that luncheon a couple of weeks ago?" "David, stop beating around the bush. I may be a nun, but I've known you my whole life. I know you well, and I've always respected you. Even during my wild years, you were one of the few guys who treated me kindly, always with courtesy and manners. I appreciate that, and one day I'll put in a good word for you." She smiled. "Yes, I was at the luncheon, and yes, I saw Brad hitting on April. Over by the restroom, I saw him grab her. I was about to step in, but April didn't need any help. She punched Brad on the side of the head and then kneed him, well, you know where. He went down, and April left. I called a waiter nearby to help Brad. That's all I saw. I don't know what's going on, but you and April are special people, and you deserve to be together. David, take some advice from a wise nun and friend. If you and April are having marital issues, ask yourself one question. Would my life be better without her? That's the only thing you need to figure out. Don't let pride or a lack of forgiveness take control. Just ask yourself, would I be happier without April? And go from there. I hope, in some small way, I helped. God bless you and April, David. I thanked Sister Mary as she drove off. She was someone I knew I could trust. She didn't know the full story, and I was sure she wouldn't lie to cover for April. I decided I'd call April tomorrow to have another conversation. But before I could, the phone rang. It was Danny. Hi, Daddy. I was supposed to call you and ask if Mommy can come to the zoo with us, remember? Yes, sweetheart, I remember, and yes, Mommy can come with us. I heard her shouting to Carly, telling her to let April know she gets to come to the zoo too. What a family. Danny, is Mom there? I need to talk to her. She yelled into the phone, Mom, Daddy wants to talk to you. Here she is, Daddy. See you on Saturday. Hi, David, this is a nice surprise. I get to go to the zoo with you. I could tell she was smiling. You could almost feel it through the phone. That's not why I was calling, but you're welcome to join us at the zoo. I actually called to let you know that Beth told me the reason Brad didn't come back to his table was because his right, got stuck, and his face was swelling. The restaurant staff took him to the emergency room. Unfortunately, he'll survive. David, those were two of the moves you taught me when we first started dating. You said if any guy approached me from the front, I should use my knee and aim for the side of his head. I guess I missed and hit his temple instead. I have you to thank for the training. April, after we get back from the zoo on Saturday, we need to have another talk. Is that okay with you? I'll do anything to bring you back to us, David. Anything. We all want you here with us, and we need you, David. All right. We'll talk on Saturday. Don't worry about making dinner. We'll eat out after seeing the animals. See you Saturday. Thank you, David. I love you. Then she hung up. On Saturday, we had a great time. I slipped up a couple of times and held April's hand, but of course, she didn't say anything. We enjoyed feeding the animals and spending time together. It had only been 3 weeks, but it felt much longer. The kids couldn't have been happier. After we left the zoo, I told the girls they could choose where we'd eat. I was expecting McDonald's or Chuck E. Cheese, but the girls shouted together, Red Lobster. I glanced over at April, knowing it was one of her favorites, and asked if she had bribed them. She said, I told you I would never lie to you. Yes, I bribed them. With what? What did you bribe them with? She looked at me and said, I promised them I would try to convince their dad to sleep at home tonight. I didn't respond to her answer. Instead, I asked everyone what they wanted to eat. After dinner, we headed home. It was getting late, so we sent the kids to bed. Then April and I went into the living room and sat down to talk. What's wrong, David? What can I do to make it right? April, I do believe you told me the truth about the luncheon. Sister Mary Lou came by and told me she saw Brad grab you and how you reacted. She had no reason to lie. My issue is that I never did anything about it 10 years ago. I feel like I should have said something, yelled at you, maybe even divorced you, but I didn't. I accepted your infidelity and did nothing. Now I'm struggling to deal with it. I don't understand, David. Do you want revenge on me? Are you thinking of having an affair? David, no one knows except you, me, Beth, and Brad. I never told anyone else. I was too ashamed. Is that it? Do you want to get even by cheating? I wish it were that simple. I love you, April, I really do. I always have. I don't want an affair. You're all I need. Sister Mary Lou came by and told me she saw you fighting off Brad. Then she gave me advice on how to solve my problem. What did she say, David? She told me to ask myself one question. Would I be happier without April in my life? And act accordingly. What's your answer, David? She asked, tears in her eyes again. "I want you, Carly, and Danny in my life every day." "Oh God, David, I love you so much," she said, kissing me. "But I still have my problem, April. If I don't get revenge on you, I'll have to take it out on Brad." "David, Brad lives in New York. What can you do?" "I'll wait for the next reunion." We went into the bedroom and made love. I got up and put on my pajama pants again. April looked at me and asked, "What are you doing, David?" "I think Danny is going to come here tonight, and I want him to be dressed." April looked at me and said, "Welcome home, David. I really love you. I wouldn't have a life if you weren't a part of it." She went to bed, and so did I. I woke up Sunday morning and found Dunn lying on my arm. It seemed like I would have to start locking the bedroom door, but it could wait another year. I loved having my baby with me. We all got back into our routines and life actually improved. April and I made a promise to each other: no more secrets of any kind. If either of us had an issue, we'd talk it out. The weight of those hidden things was gone, and it was such a relief for both of us. Time flew by, and soon it was time for our 20-year reunion. Beth was on the committee again, but April told her we'd both attend, though she wasn't going to be involved with the planning. I called Beth, who was still April's best friend, and asked if Brad had RSVP'd. She said he did, but only for one person. On a side note, though it's not that significant, Beth remarried a really nice realtor named Mike. We went to their wedding, and although Beth is quite attractive, my April was still the most beautiful woman there. I learned a few things about Brad and, of course, shared them with April. Brad became a lawyer, though not a particularly great one. He climbed the ranks by marrying the firm president's daughter. She had been his secretary, but she was the one who held all the power in the relationship. That's why she never came to any of the reunions. She wasn't about to leave New York and come to our little town for Brad's reunion. Meanwhile, Brad still acted like he was the big shot from back in the day. We came to the reunion early. April looked stunning, and when she said she dressed up for me, this time I believed her. She was wearing a short dress, garters, and underwear from Victoria's Secret. There were no tights today. We behaved like newlyweds. Friends came up to us all evening. Then I noticed Brad standing at the bar. His hair had fallen out a little, and he must have gained at least 30 pounds in the last 5 years. He was bragging to an old friend about his new Mercedes with leather seats. I walked towards him, and April, clearly nervous, followed me. When Brad's friend saw the look on my face, he quickly walked away. I went up to Brad and said, "My wife mentioned that you wanted to tell me something at the last reunion." "What was that?" Brad muttered. I don't remember. I'm sorry." "Well, I have to tell you something, you fat piece of shit. If you just touch my wife, I can't vouch for myself. Do you understand, you idiot?" "Yes, I understand," Brad muttered before quickly turning around and walking away. April leaned over, kissed me, and said, "I love you, David." I asked, "Do you love me enough to make love to me right here at this party?" "David, you've got to be kidding. I don't want anyone to see me but you." "Come with me. I need you now." We went out to the parking lot and found Brad's car. It wasn't locked, so we got in the back seat. A few weeks later, we found out that it was actually Brad's wife's car, which he borrowed to show off at the reunion. "David, we can't do this here." "Yes, we can." She got in the car, and wow, what an amazing car it was. The leather seats were big and cool. We decided to have some fun and stained the leather seats. Then I took her old pink shoes out of my pocket and put them under the seat too. We got out and headed back to the party. When the party came to an end, and we were about to leave, April began to say goodbye. I went out on the porch and noticed Brad standing around the corner smoking. I walked up to him and punched him in the stomach, causing him to double over. Then I lifted him up and hit him again, causing him to collapse to the ground. April came out and asked what I was doing. I told her I couldn't take it anymore. She said she couldn't either. She asked, "Is that revenge enough, honey?" I told her I liked it, and we headed to our car and drove home. I heard him yelling that he would sue us, but I told him that it would not go to trial because I would come to New York and deal with him first. He never filed a lawsuit. When we got home, she smiled and said that she thought we had done the wrong thing, but she was glad that I had taken revenge. I told her that the revenge would not be complete for a few more days and that I would keep her on her toes. While the children were at Grandma's, I told her that I wanted to try something new. We went into the bedroom and did it, and after that I settled down next to her and we fell asleep. When I woke up the next morning, April was watching me. After I got up to go to the bathroom, she asked me to lie down for a while. She has fulfilled her marital duty. On Monday, I instructed her to make a phone call using a prepaid phone to keep our number untraceable. A prepaid phone is a small device that comes with a set number of minutes and can be discarded after use. I had her call Brad's office, assuming he might skip his first day back after the embarrassment he had endured, needing a day to recover and get organized. Naturally, I hoped his wife or secretary would answer the phone. April glanced at me, smiled, and remarked, "Oh, David, you're so mean." I explained what I wanted her to say, and she shook her head, saying, "Honey, I never want you to be upset with me again." She called Brad's office and spoke to the receptionist. After requesting to speak with Brad and being told he wasn't in, she asked to speak with his secretary. When his secretary wife answered, April told her she had left a personal item in Brad's car and inquired if he could mail it to her. The secretary asked what the item was, and April responded that it was somewhat private. The secretary assured her it was fine and that she would keep it confidential. I left my panties in the back seat of his car. They were a gift from him from Victoria's Secret, and I would like to get them back. You could sense the secretary's frustration over the phone, but she clearly wanted all the details she could get. She inquired, "Who is this, and how do you know Brad?" April replied, "I'm his old high school girlfriend, and we've been reconnecting at reunions. Could you please have him send them to me? They complete my set, and he knows my address. Also, I'm sorry to hear about his wife passing away. I'll pass along all the information. What did you say your name was?" "Mary Lou. I'm sure he'll remember me. Thanks again, and please send him my regards." April then ended the call. April turned to me and said, "David, I didn't feel comfortable doing that. I know he deserved it, but I want you to understand I did it for you. I promised to do whatever you asked. Please don't ask me to do things like that again. April, you've proven your love to me. I promise never to ask you to go against your principles. I believe our revenge is complete. However, if Danny ever needed a kidney, I'd have to go to New York and take one from Brad myself. My family comes first." Life continued as usual. We never mentioned Brad again. We attended our 25th reunion, and Brad didn't show up. Rumor had it that he had gone through a divorce and was kicked out of his firm, starting over at a new one with significantly fewer benefits. It circulated that his wife discovered 2 pairs of panties in the back of her Mercedes. Brad claimed that he was framed, but the DNA analysis on his underwear showed that it was him. That was enough for her to believe he was cheating. There were also reports of him having affairs with a couple of secretaries at his office, using his position to pursue them. He was being sued by 2 former secretaries. She never sent us the panties back unless Sister Mary Lou received them. Carly became a teacher and now has a family of her own. Danny, on the other hand, is married to a race car driver. She manages our garage and has brought in a lot of business. She met a driver who praised her as the best mechanic he had ever seen, and certainly the prettiest. Several drivers now come to her for repairs. They have 2 children, and she always said she wanted to follow in Dad's footsteps. Some drivers even call her McDanny. At our 30th reunion, the committee called April and me up to the podium. They honored us with an award for the happiest married couple in our class and asked us about the secret to our enduring marriage amidst so many divorces and separations in today's world. I looked at April and said, "Many years ago, a very close friend shared the secret to marriage and divorce with me. She said, 'Ask yourself if you would be happier without April in your life, and act accordingly.' My answer has always been that I am much happier with April in my life." I glanced at the crowd and saw a smiling Sister Mary Lou, and I smiled back. Life is good.